more than happy to introduce our American guest, who is Jill Christensen. And Jill Christensen, we're really happy to see you here because this is one of their, I would say, HR leaders, and it's great that Jill is rated as the top-rated female speaker in the world today, in fact, and one of the tops in the speakers rating. And as far as we know, she's named top 200 global thought leader to watch in 2021. So really, we have a celebrity here. So Jill, hello, and just welcome in our Top Career Conference.
Hello, I am so excited to be here.
Yeah, so Jill will take us through, before I just stop my presentation, to give Jill a chance to be with you for 40, I think even 50 minutes. So Jill will take us through the employee disengagement, and we'll also have like number of questions, from the audience, and certainly Jill will answer all the questions our audience will have after your presentation. So here you go. I stop my demonstration. So please.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. And let's do this. Amazon, the Russian national basketball team, Apple, Manchester United, British Airways. So what do these organizations have in common? They win. And why do they win? They win because they have employees who trust leaders, who feel an emotional connection to the organization, and who will stop at nothing to ensure the people who they serve, their customers and their fans, are delighted. In short, these organizations win because their employees are engaged. When you have an amazing workplace culture and your employees are engaged, their performance absolutely skyrockets and everyone benefits. Your senior leadership team, your board of directors, your shareholders, the people in the communities where you live and work, your vendors, your customers. And we also know that your company's success is assured because the organizations in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement outperform their peers 147% in earnings per share and are growing at a rate that is 90% faster than the competition. However, here's the challenge that organizations face. They mistakenly think that they can outsource culture change, that they can outsource employee engagement to human resources and magically achieve these extraordinary results. The flaw in this logic: although HR owns employee engagement in 95% of companies around the world, HR doesn't own the people who have the greatest impact on employee engagement, and that's your frontline managers. Your CEO or president owns your frontline managers and can get them to do things that HR cannot. It's simply the truth. And for that reason, in order to drive massive levels of employee engagement, I'm going to teach you that you must engage your CEO in your journey, because that person has the ability to engage your managers and create an extraordinary workplace culture that no one can imagine leaving. As Tiana just said, it all starts with culture. Every single piece of it, culture. And so, as an employee engagement expert, I want you to trust me when I say that you can succeed in this space if you approach employee engagement as a team. However, there's a great chance that you won't succeed in this space if HR is the only player on the team. And my guess is that's how many of you have approached this up to this point. And so I'd love to ask a question. How's that working for you? And so today you're going to leave here knowing 4 critical things. You're going to understand exactly what employee engagement is. We're going to talk about why traditional approaches don't work. We're going to talk about a new approach that does work, and we're going to talk about your critical role in transforming your culture as an HR professional. And so one of the most important takeaways from my presentation is the definition of employee engagement. And so when employees are engaged, it means that they trust leadership and they feel an emotional connection to the company. And because of this, they choose to go above and beyond the call of duty and give you a lot of discretionary effort. And this is why employee engagement matters. If you think about it, your employees wake up and they go to work every single day and they have a choice. They can give you 110% discretionary effort, or they can give you scraps. They can just do what they have to do to get by, just run on that hamster wheel and just barely, again, do what they have to do so that they don't lose their job. Employees tell us that how they are treated at work and the culture in which they are being asked to do their job has a major bearing on their decision. Am I going to go to work today and give my organization my all? Or am I going to go to work today and just barely squeak by, barely do what I have to do? So a few minutes ago, I shared with you that you can succeed in this space if you approach employee engagement as a team. There's a good chance you won't succeed if human resources is the only player on the team. And so a great example of an engaged team that I want to share with you today, Dorothy and her friends from The Wizard of Oz. And the reason why I like to use them as an example is because the vast majority of people around the globe have seen this classic movie. You may have watched it as a child, you may have watched it as an adult, but most people understand The Wizard of Oz. You understand their personalities, you understand their plight, you know their story, you know what they went through. And so if you think back to The Wizard of Oz, and if you haven't seen it, you're going to learn a little bit about them and this movie today. This team absolutely went above and beyond the call of duty, and their discretionary effort was second to none. They were stalked by the Wicked Witch of the West. They were ambushed by winged monkeys. They were drugged in a poppy field, and Toto the dog was kidnapped. Does that sound like a typical day in your organization ever? But even though they went through all of these things, they never ever quit. Why? Because they were engaged. They trusted the leader giving them direction, Glinda the Good Witch, and they felt an emotional connection to their mission, which was to make it to Oz and get Dorothy back to Kansas. And so we have reams of data that show us that engaged workers sell more, they provide better customer service, they're more creative, they stay longer, they make fewer mistakes, they sell more, they're amazing brand ambassadors, they recommend your company as an employer to their family and friends, they steal less, and they're absent less. But even though we have all of this powerful data about the benefits of having engaged workers, the vast majority of companies in every region around the globe, in every country around the globe, in every industry, amongst every generation of employees, this is not just a millennial issue, are failing. How bad is it? It's absolutely dismal. According to the Gallup organization, only 20% of global employees are engaged. The vast majority of the employees, 80% of workers, sleepwalk through their day. So they're putting in time, but there's no energy, creativity, or passion. They don't trust your leaders. They don't feel emotionally connected to your organization. They're not going above and beyond the call of duty, and they're giving you zero discretionary effort. And so people say to me, well, Jill, what do disengaged workers do all day? And so the truth of the matter is they do their job to the extent that they will not get terminated or fired, right? So they do what they barely have to do to get by, but they're not going above and beyond that at all. We know that disengaged workers tend to be the people who spend a lot of times in your break rooms, your kitchenette areas, your cafeterias, chatting up other employees. And that chat usually isn't good. Disengaged workers tend to be the people who start rumors in organizations and who spread office gossip. They also, if you think about this, as they're talking to all of these other employees throughout the day, they're causing your engaged workers to become more disengaged because your engaged workers are less productive because they're being pulled away from their work by these disengaged employees who just want to chat. We also know that disengaged employees tend to be the people who call in sick when they're perfectly healthy. So there are higher levels of employee disengagement among people who call in sick. We also know that disengaged workers love to go to the Glassdoor website and write negative things about your culture, about your leaders, about your processes for the world to see. So if you're not familiar with the Glassdoor website, it's critical that you become familiar. So according to Indeed.com, the Glassdoor website is where 80% of people go to read about the company before they decide whether or not they're going to take an interview with you. And so it's critical that you have a fantastic review written by your employees on your Glassdoor website, but not because you've got a great public relations or marketing machine behind you. It's critical that you've got a great Glassdoor review because you have taken the time and the energy and the effort to create amazing workplace culture that nobody can imagine leaving and that people want to shout about from the rooftops. And so the saddest part about all of this to me is that employee engagement doesn't happen overnight. Every one of your employees showed up on their first day willing to give you 110% discretionary effort, willing to hit the ball out of the park. Every employee who started with you on their first day wanted to be the highest performing worker your organization has ever seen. But we create these dysfunctional business cultures that literally chip away at people's spirits over time. And it causes them to move from being completely engaged on their first day to being disengaged. And then what does it mean for your organization when the vast majority of your people have basically checked out? It shows up as decreased productivity, creativity, customer satisfaction, and retention. It shows up as increased absenteeism, safety issues, quality, and theft. And the granddaddy of them all, employee disengagement, shows up as stagnant or decreased profitable revenue growth. Because we know there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and bottom line results. The most profitable companies in the world and the companies that are growing the fastest have the highest levels of employee engagement, and that is not a coincidence. And so where did all of this data and tracking employee engagement start? The Gallup Research Organization started conducting employee engagement surveys about 20 years ago. They conduct the survey every year and they track employee engagement around the globe in all regions and virtually in all companies. And in spite of the fact that organizations spend billions of dollars trying to fix their cultures, and in spite of the fact that 87% of senior leaders say that employee disengagement poses a threat to my bottom line, crappy dysfunctional workplace cultures still reign supreme. And so Gallup started conducting this data about 20 years ago, and the needle has barely moved. According to Gallup, a 2-point increase per year in an organization is statistically significant. So if we were to increase 2 points around the globe every year, right now, we should easily be 40 to 50% or higher. And we are still only at 20% employee engagement. And so the big question on the table is why? So based on all of the research that I have conducted to write my books, I believe that the reason why the employee engagement needle has not moved is because organizations continue to cling to traditional approaches to improve employee engagement that simply don't work. They never have worked and they never will work. And what is the most popular traditional approach to improve a culture? Senior leaders outsource culture change to HR. I repeat, we are not making progress in this space because senior leaders ask HR to change the culture, to fix the culture, to re-engage employees. And I want to assure you, this isn't a knock or a dig against HR people at all. I've worked with thousands of HR people in my career, and strategic HR professionals are absolutely wonderful. However, as I said a few moments ago, HR owns employee engagement, fixing employee engagement in virtually most companies around the globe, but you don't own the people who have the greatest impact on your culture, who have the greatest impact on employee engagement, and that's your frontline managers. Your CEO owns your frontline managers and can get them to do things that HR cannot. It's just the truth. And for this reason, if we're no longer going to rely on HR to fix every broken culture around the world, what is a strategy that actually works? This. Your senior leaders must get involved in and champion your employee engagement strategy. And so you might be thinking, well, Jill, how do I get my senior leaders to engage in employee engagement when they believe that I own employee engagement? Because they do. The answer to that question, data. Senior leaders love numbers. They love numbers. They eat them up. Why? Because you don't get to be in the corner office without knowing a thing or two about the numbers. Your senior leaders present your numbers, your organization's numbers, to the board of directors, to the customers, to the industry analysts, to the stock market, right? To you as employees, all of the time. Senior leaders are paid a lot of money to ensure the numbers are directionally correct, okay? And so senior leaders love numbers, they love data, they can't get enough of it. And so if you go onto the internet and Google, what are the benefits of engaging employees? Or what are the benefits of having high levels of employee engagement? You are going to see so much data, you're not going to know what to do with it. You're going to see the correlation between employee engagement and increased retention. You're going to see data that shows the correlation between employee engagement and increased customer satisfaction scores. You're going to see the correlation between employee engagement and increased employee productivity. And most importantly to your senior leaders, you're going to see data which shows the correlation between employee engagement and increased profitable revenue growth. When you share the data with your senior leaders, your savvy leaders are going to get it, and they're going to agree to partner with you on your employee engagement journey in your organization. And then once your CEO or president, somebody on your senior leadership team is engaged and understands the benefit of having an amazing workplace culture, he or she is going to lead one manager town hall meeting or many manager town hall meetings, depending on how many managers you have in your organization. And then your CEO is going to let your managers know specific actions that they can do in your organization to catapult employee engagement. And we're going to get to those actions in a moment because I'm going to hand them to you on a silver platter. And what you're going to see is that those actions fall into 4 major areas. Why those 4 major areas? Because employees tell us that when you get these 4 areas right, my employee engagement is going to catapult. And I want you to focus right now on one word on my slide, and it's strategy. If you roll out an employee engagement journey and you call it a program or an initiative, your employees are going to think that it's the program du jour. Here one day, gone the next. In order for your employees to believe, I mean really believe, that you are serious about creating an amazing workplace culture, they have to see that you're doing things differently. They have to see that your CEO or some senior leader is engaged in the journey. They have to see that that person is gathering up and bringing together all of your managers and teaching them how to engage employees. They have to see that you conduct an employee engagement survey so that you know your baseline data so that you can improve your number year over year. They have to see that you're communicating with employees about your employee engagement journey and that you're open and honest about where you currently are in the journey, where you want to be, and your progress along the roadmap. Because you want to know what? You might be thinking right now, Jill, this sounds difficult, but it's not. It's incredibly straightforward. You know, people whine at me all the time. Employee engagement is so difficult. Employee engagement is so hard. You guys, it isn't difficult. It isn't hard. The definition of culture is how we do things here. And so in order for you to change your culture, you simply need to do things here differently tomorrow than you're doing here today. Once you do that, you've got culture change. And in a moment, I'm going to share with you the 4 areas and the action items that you can do in your organization to catapult employee engagement. And when I say that you can do, again, remember, this isn't about you, HR, owning this. This is about HR acting like the conductor in an orchestra. You are going to go back and you are going to bring the strategy and you are going to direct people as to what they need to do. You're going to get someone from your senior leadership team engaged to partner with you, to be the voice for your employee engagement journey. That leader is going to get your managers involved. Your managers are going to get your employees to engage. Okay, so really what you're doing is you're acting like a strategic HR business partner by bringing the strategy to the table and then lining everybody up so that you can execute on the strategy. You're no longer going to be in the trenches doing the work. We are elevating HR to a strategic position to have a seat at the table, which I know all of you want to be in. And so, where did this strategy come from? The first 22 years of my career, I worked in a large Fortune 500 company that was in the telecommunications industry, and we had a horrendous culture. So I was at the point where I was either going to leave or do something about it. And I was brought up and taught that you do something about it. And so I benchmarked the 15 organizations around the globe with the highest levels of employee engagement. And in all of those organizations, somebody from the senior leadership team was championing the journey, okay? It wasn't owned by HR. And then in many of those organizations, they were focusing in 8 to 10 different areas. And I thought that that was way too many. I'm a 3 to 5 girl. I think if you want to succeed in life, you need to go after 3 to 5 goals. Organizations need to set 3 to 5 goals for the year. As an individual, you shouldn't have more than 3 to 5 goals. If you think about this, we can barely even knock off one New Year's resolution, right? How long does your one New Year's resolution take to fall off the wagon and for you to stop doing it? And so 8 to 10 goals sounded like too much to me. I really thought 3 to 5 was the sweet spot. And so I started looking at all of the areas that these high-performing organizations were focusing in. And out of those 8 to 10 areas, I chose 4 that I believed would make a major impact on employee engagement. I went back to our president and I said, Lou, I said, I've come up with a strategy that I believe is going to work, but I can't be successful without you. We can't be successful without you. And he actually said to me, why? Aren't we going to outsource this to HR? And I said, no, we're not going to outsource this to HR. I said, I need you to stand up and admit that our culture isn't where it needs to be, but together we can fix it. I said, and then I need you to bring all of our managers together in town hall meetings and let them know that they are key to increasing employee engagement in our organization. And here are the things that they can do on a day-to-day basis to increase employee engagement. I said, then we need to track our score quarter over quarter, year over year to ensure that we're directionally correct. And then I need you to hold managers accountable. I need you to hold them accountable for our employee engagement journey. If the employee engagement score is rising, they're doing what they need to do. If it's staying stagnant or not rising, then they're not doing what they need to do. And I need you to be able to recognize them and lift them up and give them kudos for their accomplishments. Or I need you to help them course correct if we see that they are not executing on the strategy. Can you do this? He said yes. We executed on this strategy in our global organization. And in 1 year, we increased employee engagement 12 points. And more importantly, our stock rose 26%. And so I'm sharing this data with you to give you hope. If we could re-engage 35,000 employees in 55 countries in a bureaucratic, old, political, conservative telecommunications company, you can absolutely use this strategy to improve employee engagement in your firm. And so here's exactly what this looks like, my friends. This is all about your senior leaders, your managers, putting your employees first. So your employees can put your customers first. So your customer experience can be second to none. So your customers come back to you for more. Cha-ching, 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 all the way to the bank. And that is the value of employee engagement. And this is what I want for you. This is what I want for all of your organizations. And you can do this by embracing the employee engagement strategy that you see on your screen, and by getting your senior leader engaged, who will engage your managers, and then you will be well on your way on your fabulous employee engagement journey. And so, before we talk about the 4 areas where you need to focus, I'm going to share with you what happens when you don't have an extraordinary workplace culture. So that thing in the white circle is a flying monkey from the Wizard of Oz, otherwise known as a bad manager or a bad leader. And so how many of you were absolutely terrorized when, as a child or as an adult, you watched the flying monkeys descend from the castle in the Wizard of Oz, right? It was the most terrorizing part of the movie. And I remember sleeping with my bedroom light on for a week. That's how afraid I was. And so although I'm not in front of you virtually, I would love for you to raise your hand if you have worked for a flying monkey, right? Many of us have worked for a flying monkey, and it's absolutely horrible. And this picture is not a stretch. When your employees don't trust your leaders, when they don't trust your managers, they go to work every single day and they feel like they are under attack. A black cloud hangs over their head and they respond by disengaging. But it doesn't have to be this way. Start the conversation with a senior leader and you are halfway to cracking the code to employee disengagement. The second part of the strategy, the 4 focus areas. The 4 areas where your managers need to focus their efforts. And so we're going to dive into each of these circles because I want you to understand exactly what your managers can be doing in your organization to catapult employee engagement. And again, I want you to remember that we didn't just pull these out of the air. These are areas that employees say, when you get this right, company, I will engage. So the first area, get the right person in every chair. This is who you hire and who you fire. Who you hire. I believe that organizations and managers make the mistake of they hire for a job skills fit. You need to be hiring for a values match. You need to hire people whose individual values are aligned with your organization's values. Why? Because when a person is aligned with the organization's values, a person instantly sees themselves in the organization. They feel that values match and they are incredibly engaged right from the get-go. Who you fire. I want to start by saying, I really do believe that every person in the world has the ability to learn and grow and to become a better person and to become a better employee. However, if you have people in your firm who have a toxic negative attitude or who are incompetent at their job to the point where everyone has to pick up the slack around them, those people need to be put on a performance improvement plan or a development plan as soon as possible. And if they fail their development plan, they need to be terminated. I didn't say they needed to be moved from marketing to sales or from IT to the front desk, because then you're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I said, if somebody fails their performance development plan, they need to go. Why? Because every single person in your organization knows who these people are. We can name them by name, right? We know who the people are who have a bad attitude or who are dysfunctional at their job. And every employee knows who these people are. And if you do not develop these people or remove them from your organization, you're going to be left with every single person in your organization thinking the same thing. Why isn't senior leadership doing anything about this? And in that moment, you are driving active disengagement. Your engaged employees are thinking that they can't trust senior leaders, because if they can't even trust your senior leaders to deal with your poor performers, How can they trust your senior leaders to bring your organization successfully into the 22nd century, right? And your employees know this. And so when you don't remove people from your firm who fail their development plan, you're driving active disengagement among your engaged workers. So here are the 3 things your managers can do. They can hire for a values match versus a job skills fit. They can put people on a performance improvement plan who have a bad attitude or who are failing at their job. And they can remove people from your organization who fail their development plan. Second, goal alignment. When we ask employees around the world, why do you go to work every day? 76% say to add meaning, to add value, to make a difference, to be connected to something bigger than myself. Only 20% of people around the globe go to work strictly for a paycheck. And so one of the most important things that you could do in your firm is goal alignment. This is where your CEO or president shares his or her goals with all employees in your company. And then all of your employees write individual objectives that are based off of the CEO's goals. This is so much more powerful than your employees writing individual objectives that are based off of their job description. Because when you have employees who have individual goals that are aligned with your CEO's goals, everybody is going to feel important. Everybody is going to feel like they are connected, marching forward toward the same North Star, toward the same vision, toward the same mission. Everybody is going after those 5 key goals. And your organization is going to benefit tremendously, because if you have 100 people in your organization and they all have 5 goals written based off of their job description, you're going to be making incremental progress in 500 different areas. If you have 100 employees in your organization and everyone has 5 goals written based off of the CEO's 5 goals, everybody in your firm is going to be working toward executing on those goals. And you are going to not see those goals show up next year because you had the entire organization connected, moving forward in the same direction. That is how you're going to achieve your organization's goals much faster. And then we can't talk about setting goals without talking about performance management, because when people have goals, you need to have conversations with them about how they're doing. One of the biggest mistakes I see organizations make, managers have annual performance management conversations. You can't be doing that. You've got to have formal conversations monthly or quarterly. People want to know how they're doing. And if they're off course, you want to have those conversations sooner rather than later so that they can course correct and you can start moving them in the right direction. In addition to more frequent conversations, your managers need to have ad hoc performance management conversations. That's where managers say to an employee in the moment, you're doing this well, or you're doing this poorly. You've got a development area, so let's shift. Employees tell us, when my manager tells me that I'm doing something well in the moment, I'm going to do more of it in the moment because I liked hearing that positive feedback. Employees also tell us, when my manager course corrects me in the moment, it causes me to see what I could be doing better, what I could be doing differently, and it causes me to shift my actions in the moment, which is critical because you don't want people doing things poorly any longer than they already are. So in goal alignment, your managers need to be setting goals for your employees that are aligned with your CEO's goals versus aligned with the job description. Your managers need to be having quarterly or monthly performance management conversations, not annually. And your managers need to do ad hoc performance management feedback, which is where they catch people in the moment doing something well or poorly and praise them so they keep doing more of it, or course correct with them. It's a development opportunity so that they stop doing what they're doing and they shift direction. Third bucket, create a two-way communication culture. You guys, right now in the world, 50% of employees are millennials or Gen Zs. By the end of 2025, 75% of the world's workforce will be millennials and Gen Zs. These people have a smartphone in their hand constantly, and they've had it in their hand since they were a young child. They are used to bombarding people with communications, and they are used to being bombarded with communications. They love to communicate. And then they go into your firm and they hear from the CEO once a year, or your managers don't have staff meetings, or nobody asks them what they think. That is absolutely not going to cut it. So here are 3 things that your managers can be doing to create a two-way communication culture. And the way we define this is a culture where two-way, right? It's not where information is pushed out to employees. That's a one-way culture. It's a two-way where employees have the opportunity to engage in a dialogue with leaders and managers, where employees are given the opportunity to speak up and to voice their opinions. That drives massive levels of employee engagement. People tell us, when I have a voice at work and I think my voice is being heard, it catapults my employee engagement levels. So here are 3 things your managers can do to help build a two-way communication culture. 1, focus groups. This is where you pull people together before a major decision is made, and you ask employees for their input, okay? So you don't just go into a corner office and make a decision that impacts employees, like changing your benefits plan. You speak to employees and say, we're thinking about changing our benefits plan. Talk to us. What would you like to see? What new benefits would you like us to provide? What benefits do we provide that you don't use? Gather their input and their feedback. Then when you announce your new benefits plan, because you've conducted focus groups where you bring small groups of people together and get their input on a decision that is about to be made, you can then say to employees, you spoke, we listened. We conducted focus groups. Here's our new benefits provider. Here's what they provide. Here's what they don't provide and why. You guys, that why is key. In communications and organizations, many companies leave out the why. It explains why you made the decision you did. And when you explain the why, people become much more reasonable. They don't push back. They understand why decisions were made. And it will go a long way to driving trust in senior leaders and managers and employee engagement. Second thing that your managers can do, they can conduct a weekly staff meeting where they rotate the leadership of that weekly staff meeting among each employee on the team. Why? Because as a manager, when you say to an employee that week, Jenny, I would like you to lead this week's staff meeting. Do you know what Jenny just heard? He trusts me. And employees tell us, when I feel like my manager trusts me, I in turn trust my manager, and it catapults my employee engagement. Another thing your managers can do, I call it quarterly conversations. Once a quarter, all of your managers should have a one-on-one conversation with the employees who report directly to them. And when we ask managers, why don't you have more one-on-ones? They all say, because I don't know what to talk about. So you know what? We're going to give your managers something to talk about. In quarterly conversations, you're going to pick a question of the quarter for your company. A great question to start with is, what do you love about your job and what do you dislike about your job? Then every manager in your company is going to have a one-on-one conversation with their employee about the question of the quarter. This is absolutely going to make your employees feel like their managers care. And we know when employees think that their managers care, their employee catapults. The 3 things your managers can do: focus groups, weekly staff meetings where they rotate the leadership, and quarterly conversations. And finally, we've got recognition. You guys, organizations spend billions of money, so much money every single year on company branded socks, right? They spend all this money and they give people socks with a logo on it. A pair of socks is not going to stop someone from quitting on your company if you've got a bad culture. You've got to create a culture of rampant recognition where everybody can recognize everybody else. A great thing for you is, this is one of them, but it's an example of the size, is to create what I call a value card. Create 4x6 postcards with your values printed on them, where somebody can write to and from, fill in the names, check off the value that the employee role modeled. such as accountability, creativity, fun, innovation, right? We all have values in our organization. Then your employees can be handing these cards to one another. They'll be hanging them up in their cubicles, hanging them up in their workspace. If you are still very much hybrid or people are working from home, you can be posting them on the intranet so that everyone can see the types of values cards that are being distributed in your organization. It makes people feel good. You can also create what I call the wall of honor or the wall of fame. When we go back to having a lot of people in live workspaces, find the biggest wall in your workspace and write on it, wall of honor, wall of fame. Tell your managers, I want you to post every single values card that you distribute. I want you to create posters, put things on the wall, all of the individual accomplishments, all of the team accomplishments. I want you to show people that we care. And again, if we are remote, you can create an intranet site where where all of your managers can start posting all of the amazing things that your workers are doing. Another great thing that you could do, I could call it a clap in or a clap out. When you've got people who start on their first day, everybody in the company should surround that person when they're packing up their work desk and give them a standing ovation, clap them out of the building. Right? Don't follow them to their car because that's like creepy, but you can follow them to the front door, right? When you have key customers coming in, tell all of your employees, go line the sidewalks. Let's give our key customer a standing ovation into the building. These are such simple things that you can do to lift people up. When you give somebody a standing ovation with no words, trust me, they're going to go home and say, you're not going to believe this. The entire company gave me a standing ovation. Recognition is so key. What can your managers be doing? They can be giving people standing ovations with their team. You can create values cards that can be handed out so that people understand that they're doing an amazing job role modeling your values. And you can create that wall of honor or wall of fame. And so I know that many of you are saying there's something to this. We should do this in our company. And right now you might be thinking, okay, I'm going to go back and start the conversation with the senior leader, right? You're committed to that. You see the value that this could bring to your organization. But I also know from experience that you're going to get busy. You might look at your smartphone, you might look at your email box. You're going to start thinking about all the things that you learned today, and you might feel overwhelmed, and you might feel like, you know what, I don't know what to do next, so I'm just not going to do anything. And I understand that that might be how you're feeling, but if not you, who? If you don't make a commitment to start the conversation with your CEO or president, you are going to end up with the same mediocre culture year after year after year. Because you know, and I know, the traditional approaches to employee engagement don't work. Return to your workplace. Let your CEO know that you have discovered a proven strategy to increase customer satisfaction, productivity, retention, and revenue growth, but you cannot succeed without them. That's how you're going to create a new reality for yourself as a strategic HR business partner and for your organization. To help you start the conversation, I've got 2 books that are available on Amazon. My second book, Remote 101, will be available before mid-October. I found out yesterday it's going to be available on the first week in October. And then also, I would love to encourage you to become a free member of My Culture Nation. When you're in My Culture Nation, you will get a weekly 5-minute read that brings forth a problem that organizations are facing and a solution that you can execute on in your firm. There's also a poll in my weekly newsletter, live tour dates, and invitations to my free quarterly webinars. And so in order for you to get on that list, the URL is on the screen. It's bit.ly, please count me in. And so please, I encourage you, if anything that I said to you today resonates with you, to sign up for that, because I want to continue bringing you solutions on how you can be a stronger leader, a stronger HR business partner, and I want to help you figure out how to break down the walls and the problems that organizations are facing. Because I can assure you of this, if you're not deliberate about creating an extraordinary culture, you're going to end up with a culture by chance, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be mediocre at best, and mediocrity is not going to drive extraordinary business results. And so, what are the key takeaways? Put people first, believe it doesn't have to be difficult, and partner with other leaders to own it. As the title of my first book reads, if not you, who? You chose to be a leader, a dealer in hope. And with that choice comes an enormous responsibility to ensure your company succeeds. The quickest path to that end game is for you to re-engage your most valuable asset, your people. We know that engaged employees give you blood, sweat, and tears, and your disengaged employees give you scraps. It's the truth. And for this reason, your disengaged employees offer you the greatest untapped potential for you to improve productivity, profitability, and performance, period. And then finally, I just want to thank you for being here today and getting it. You went to the top career conference because you wanted to grow, you wanted to learn, you wanted to develop, you want to become the best HR professional that you can be. And for that, I applaud you. I want you to never ever doubt your ability to reach or exceed your employee engagement goals. You've got the strategy, so you have everything inside of you that you need to succeed. Everything. You have the power. You always did. You just need to go back to your organization and unleash it. And with that, I would love to get to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jill. It just like took me really like a few minutes, to like think through what you've been telling us, because it's been like, to me, it was like a deep, like mindset change session,
Yes.
and sure that our audience, like felt the same. Anyway, like we'll have huge amount of questions for you, so we'll try to fit into time, but I just will ask David maybe to excuse us for a few minutes, because like our audience is like very much involved into all this, involved into the engagement issues. Okay, so anyway, now let's go through. So first of all, Jill, based on your great experience, what is the most common reason for bad communication between the cross-functional, for example, yes, between the departments and the company? So what will be the key reason cross-functionally? Mm-hmm.
So I honestly believe that a lot of people just are not naturally good communicators. And so I believe one of the most important things an organization can do is to teach people how to communicate more openly and honestly, and also teach them how to have conversations that they may view as being conflict. Most people do not like conflict, and they don't like to have conversations that they believe might be confrontational. And so when a person feels more comfortable communicating, and also communicating about conflict or something that potentially isn't working, when they have the skills to communicate more effectively, they are more apt to communicate. And so again, we don't teach people how to communicate well. And so I would say that communication training is critical for all of your managers and all of your leaders, really even for all of your employees. It's the #1 training that I believe should be taking place inside of organizations, and also how to communicate through conflict. When people feel comfortable communicating, they will be more apt to communicate. Also, you could recognize people for communicating cross-functionally. So you could talk inside of your organization about the importance of communicating cross-functionally, and then you could hold up those people and teams who do it well as role models and recognize them. Because we know employees tell us, I'd like to be recognized. So when a person sees someone being recognized for cross-functional communication, they're more apt to communicate cross-functionally because they too want to be recognized.
Thank you, Jill. Also, another question that you mentioned, that there were steps which managers have to make, they need to follow, in order to raise engagement. So basically, in few words, what would be the steps for the management?
So what the senior leaders need to do is to stand up and admit that our culture isn't where it needs to be, but we can fix this. Then the senior leader needs to bring the managers together and let them know the 4 areas that we know drive high levels of employee engagement. And then I gave you 3 examples in each of those 4 areas that your managers can do. And so the way that you can measure their success is if you have an employee engagement survey in your company, you conduct the survey and you'll have your baseline data as to what our employee engagement score is. The average score around the world is only 20%. So you'll know, as our company, we're starting at 35% employee engagement. Then your managers go out and execute in the 4 areas. Then you're going to continue to conduct your employee engagement survey to ensure that the number is going higher. Trust me when I tell you, if your managers are executing on the action items, your score is going to increase. If your managers are not executing, your score is going to stay the same or decrease. And then again, it's about your senior leader standing up and saying, we're making progress, congratulations, everyone is doing a great job, keep doing what you're doing. Or standing up and saying, our employee engagement score is staying the same or going backward. So let's have a 2-way conversation, managers. Let's talk about what it is you're doing with your teams, what you believe is working, what you believe isn't working. Are there any tools or resources that you feel like you need to help execute? Is there any training that you feel like you need? It's really important for the managers to feel like they're supported in this and that they're just not out there having to figure it out on their own. But in the manager town hall meetings, we're giving the managers specific actions that they can take and then letting them know how we're going to measure their success. So we are coming full circle. We're not just saying you need to increase engagement. We're saying you need to increase engagement because you are a key conduit to your employees' employee engagement score. Here's what you need to do. Here's how we're measuring your success. And if you find that you need help, we're there for you. Let's figure out how to course correct so we can get on track.
Okay, yeah. Also another maybe like a bit provocative question, but need to answer it anyway. So what do you think, Jill? Is it possible to have a good employee engagement if remuneration, the reward package, is below the market? Because manager might say that it is HR that assures, the stable work conditions, and compensation level first. And then it's, so please explain it to us what you think.
Yes. So we have all the data in the world that shows employees typically do not leave organizations if their pay is at market rate. Okay. If your culture is good and the pay is at market rate, you should be fine. But we do know that if people are being paid less than market rate, there's a much better chance that they're going to leave your organization, especially if you've got a bad culture. And so everybody, in my opinion, should be paying their employees and giving them a benefits package that is on par with those jobs in your industry or in your country, et cetera, right? And we have all that data. We know what it looks like. And so everyone should be paid market rate or higher. Okay. But we also know people typically, if your culture is great and they're being paid market rate, they will not leave for another job. Okay. And so everyone should be paying market rate, but market rate does not determine whether or not somebody will stay. If you can't pay market rate, but you've got an extraordinary workplace culture, there's a great chance that you're going to be able to retain your people. All the data in the world shows that, because people do not go to work strictly for pay or salary. They go to work because they want to make a difference. They want to add value. They want to have meaning. They want to be connected to something bigger than themselves.
Okay, another question which certainly comes along is how to tackle, what do you think, how to tackle cases when managers make employees to provide high results during the engagement survey and employees just don't feel free to be honest, not believing that all answers are anonymous, so they're just afraid of it?
Excellent question. It's something that we face worldwide. That's one of the biggest concerns in America about employee engagement surveys. Employees say, I don't think the results are anonymous, so I'm not going to give you my feedback. This is what you need to say to employees before you launch your employee engagement survey. You need to say, our culture is not where it needs to be, but together we can fix this. The only way we are going to know where to focus our efforts is if you complete the employee engagement survey. So, because we need you to tell us where we are falling short, where we need to improve. And I think it's also important to say, address it right up front. We know that many of you think the survey is not anonymous, but we can assure you that it is anonymous. We're not looking to see who made what comment. We're looking to find out where, as an organization, we need to improve based on your thoughts, your input. And the only way that we will know where to focus is if you fill out the survey so that we can see what our lowest scoring questions are. Okay, so rather than sweeping it on the anonymous thing under the rug, address it right up front. Say to people, we know that there might be a concern about anonymity. I can barely say that word. We know this. And, you know, you could even say, could we track every answer back? You know, yes, but it would take too much time. It's not even worth it. We're not going to do that. We want to know what you think because we care about what you think, and we care about improving the areas where you believe we're not pulling our weight. And so you just need to really be open and honest. And the more open and honest and transparent that you can be about the fact that we don't have a good culture, we need your input to figure out where we need to focus. And then we're going to circle back and share the results of the survey with you. We're going to tell you what our employee engagement score is. And together we're going to embark on a journey. When you do it like that, people will trust you more. They'll feel like you're all in it together, and you'll get a lot more people responding to that survey than you would have otherwise.
Yeah, Jill, thank you. But that's not it yet. Another few questions. So you know that certainly you do know that companies, you know, now they're going through mergers, acquisitions, different transformations, and really it affects employees a lot. So what would be your insights, you know, like the key insights, how to keep employees engagement, you know, like through all these transformations, you know, because it could be culture change, corporate culture change, everything.
Yes. So they say that in a merger or an acquisition, the main area where two companies coming together fail is culture. So they take into account our products and services, our logo, our brand, right? The name of our company, where we're going to do business, what we're going to offer, but they don't think about culture. And so whenever there is a merger or an acquisition, the people who are on that M&A team need to have culture as one of their pillars, because it is so critical that two organizations think about who we want to be when we grow up, right? The definition of culture is how we do things here. In a merger or an acquisition, we need to decide how are we going to do things here. That needs to be communicated to employees. And I believe that when an employee sees that an M&A team is taking culture into account and talking about the culture, talking about the values, holding people accountable for the values, rewarding people for the values, people need to see that culture is a part of the conversation. And I believe, they also need to be involved in the culture conversation, right? You can conduct focus groups with employees. What do you want our new culture to look like? So that you're taking employees' feelings and ideas and thoughts and dreams and hopes and wishes into account. So I think talking about culture during the M&A is important because it lets people know they care about the culture. They know it's important. They're not leaving it to chance. They're figuring out what it's going to look like with our input and creating that. And so, and again, I also believe the four things that I talked about, right? Who you keep in every chair, who you remove from the company, setting goals for the new company that everyone is aligned with and that everyone has individual goals that are based on. Constant communication, right? Two-way communication, asking employees, what do you want our culture to look like? Conducting focus groups, and then recognizing people for all of the effort and time and energy that they have put into the merging of the organizations. Because as you said, it's not simple. It takes a lot of time, effort, manpower, energy, focus. And so reward people and acknowledge that this isn't Always straightforward. It isn't always going to be easy, but we're going to get through this together as a team. And when you talk like that, you talk about culture, you talk about team, you ask people to help build the new company together, they're going to stay engaged.
Yeah. Also, another question just around that is, what would you think as an expert? How would you define that a person, like a potential employee, is in a good fit? Because we often as HR see that hiring managers assume maybe the age or gender that would fit their team, but then how is it possible to use that, as non-biased as possible, like to have non-biased opinion?
Exactly. Bias is huge. We all know that we hire ourselves. We hire ourselves, right? Because we like to be around people who are like us. We like ourselves for the most part. And so we tend to hire ourselves. And so that bias is incredibly, it comes into play. It's just the truth. But again, if a manager can focus on hiring for a values match, so all of your organization should have values. This should be 5 to 7 words that define your culture, that define who you are. We value accountability, fun, creativity, innovation, customer service, right? These are examples of values. You need to know what your values are for the organization and encourage your managers to hire for a values match. Do not look at gender, age, background, education, etc. You need to bring people into your organization who live, eat, breathe, emulate, role model your company's values, because then you are bringing in people who are the best fit for your company culture, for your organization. So we need to stop hiring for a job skills match, because here's the deal. I believe that any smart person in the world can be trained to do any job in the world. You cannot train for values. You can't train someone to have a good work ethic. You can't train someone to be honest. You can't train someone to be innovative. A person either is these things or they're not. And so hiring for a values fit, that's where the focus needs to be for the manager.
Yeah, Jill. Also, just another, I think the last maybe question, because we're taking your time, and certainly there is still like a lot of things to talk about engagement, especially with your insights. But our audience is asking you once again to go through the cards, because you remember you just showed us a small exercise with the value cards, which so maybe you could explain again, like very briefly, what it is all about, because they want to try it.
Sure. Okay, so this isn't an example of a values card, but this is a 4 by 6 inch, sorry, I'm not in metrics, postcard. And then you write, you have these printed at a print shop, a printer. On the card, your 6 values, like innovation, customer service, fun, accountability, whatever your organization's values are, you print those words on the card with a box next to the word. Then you say to and from. And a person can write to Anna from Jill, and I can check off innovation. And then at the bottom of the card, you would have some blank lines where I could write, Anna, the marketing report that you created was so innovative. I've never seen anybody approach it that way or include so much competitive customer data. Keep up the great work, right? And then I hand the card to Anna, right? So she can see what she did that was so good in our organization. A lot, and not only is this helping recognize people, it's also helping you live the values. So many times in organizations, values are simply a plaque on the wall. You don't want your values to be a plaque on the wall. You want your values to come alive in your organization. So when you hire people whose values mirror your company's values, you're getting people in the door who have the values. When you recognize people for living the values are coming to life. When you talk about the values in the corporate communications, people are hearing about the values. In performance management, you shouldn't just be rating people on whether or not they've accomplished their goals. That should be 50% of their performance management score. The other 50% should be the extent to which they're living the values. right? So you need the values to show up day to day. They can't be a poster on the wall. And by creating values cards and recognizing people for living the values, you are really embodying and pushing the culture down and speaking to how important the culture is, and that we recognize people who live our culture attributes. And so it's an amazing way to really get your culture, your values to take hold. And again, these postcards are very inexpensive to print up. You will start seeing them everywhere. People will post them on intranet sites. They'll be hanging in people's cubicles. They will be in office space. And, you know, it enables a person just to look around and say, I work for a company that gets it. I work for a company that has strong values, that believes in our values, that enables us to recognize one another for living the values. And again, all of these things cause people to engage because they get people to understand that our managers care, our leaders care. They're trying to build something great here, and I want to be a part of that.
Jill, thank you very much. That's been absolutely great, wonderful presentation full of different insights. And I would like our audience to thank you in the chat. I'll send it to you later,
Okay.
you know, so because there are absolutely great things going now in our chat. And just thank you again. So we'll be in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm on LinkedIn. If anybody would like to connect on LinkedIn, please let's do that. And again, go get them. You can all do this.